Hello there, I'm Black Bright News, and I've decided to do a series called Food for the Heart because not all important news happens in the world. Sometimes some of it happens in the human heart. And so today's Food for the Heart is recovering after rejection. So I just want to welcome you to the very first edition of Food for the Heart. Every day we hear news about what's happening around us, but today I'd like us to spend a few minutes thinking about what's happening within us. And I start with myself because I've been going through a series of emotions recently. Some I've tried to cope with a smile. Some are more difficult too. So today's Food for the Heart is recovering after rejection. At some point in our life, nearly all of us experience rejection. It might come from a relationship that ended, a job we didn't get, a friendship that faded away, or even a family member who became distant. Rejection doesn't always arrive with an explanation. Sometimes it comes with silence, and strangely enough, silence can hurt just as much as harsh words. One of the hardest things about rejection is that we often turn it into a question about our worth. We ask ourselves, was my best not good enough? If only I'd said this or that. Before we know it, we're putting ourselves on trial with no judge, no jury, and no real evidence. Remember that rejection is an event. It's not your identity. Just because one person couldn't see your value doesn't mean you have no value. Sometimes people walk away because their needs have changed. Sometimes it's because they want to try something new and exciting, or just something different. Sometimes circumstances change. Sometimes two lives are simply heading in different directions. And yes, some people make choices that leave us hurt and confused. None of those things automatically define who we are. The truth is, rejection hurts because we invest part of ourselves in people, places, and dreams. When they disappear, it can feel as though a piece of us has disappeared too. But healing begins when we realize that our value was never wrapped up in someone else's decision. Sometimes we're not only grieving the person or the opportunity, we're grieving the future we imagined. We picture holidays that never happened and reminisce on those that did. Conversations we'll never have. Plans that will never come to become reality. It's natural to feel that loss, but it's important to recognize what we're really grieving, because once we do, we can begin to let it go. One thing that has helped me is to stop asking, why didn't he choose me? And ask, what do I need to move forward? Those are very different questions. The first prevents me from looking backwards. And the second gently turns my eyes towards hope for tomorrow. So today, if rejection has found its way into your heart, be kind to yourself. You don't have to pretend it didn't hurt or it didn't happen. You don't have to rush your healing. Give yourself permission to feel disappointed without allowing disappointment to become your identity. And while you're healing, keep doing the things that remind you of who you are. Listen to music that lifts your spirit. Take a walk. Read something encouraging. Learn something new. Keep living your life even if your heart is taking smaller steps than usual. Little by little, you'll discover that life didn't end with the rejection. In fact, one day you'll probably look back and realize that what felt like the end of the road was actually not only a bend in the road that led to a new beginning. You'll probably look back and realize that what felt like the end of the road was actually only a bend in the road that led to a new beginning. You couldn't see what was around the corner because you were looking at that closed door behind you. So don't let one person's inability to see your value become the way you see yourself. Thank you for joining me for today's Food for the Heart. Some of it happens, it's because not all important news happens in the world. Some of it happens in the human heart. So let me leave you with a little homework. Stop replaying those conversations. You know, we do it all the time. You know, if only I'd done this, should I have said that? Should I not have done that? Should I have, what was the last thing? Was there a hint? Did I miss something? And you keep playing them over in your head. Don't do that. It's not going to make a difference. And it's only going to make you feel worse. You can only control what you can control, and you can only control what you can change. There are certain things you can't change. Write down 3 things you still value about yourself. I know what I value about myself is that I'm hopeful. I have faith in God. And I know my capacity. I know my competencies. I know my attributes. I know what I bring to the table. So I have a lot to value about myself, and I'm sure you do too. So start writing down those things that you value about yourself and not harbour. I know some people who have been rejected. They never recover from it. They use that as their identity. I wasn't good enough for that person, therefore I'm not good enough for anyone. Don't let that be your model for the future. Call someone who appreciates you, and if they're not available, imagine what they might have said had you got through to them. When I think of somebody who appreciates me, I think of my friends who would probably say, oh, Myrna, you always lift my spirits, or Myrna, you always make me laugh. You always have something interesting to say. You are so on the ball. You're so caring. I think about all of the things that people say about me. And that's what you should do. Think about all the things that people have said to you and would say to you, especially those who are close to you. And spend time doing things that remind you of who you are. Who are you? What do you love doing? Regardless of what it is. I was watching this lady on TikTok, and she was talking about the value of living on her own and how she had to kind of separate herself from people. And people would call her a party pooper because she didn't want to go out anymore. But she said she couldn't think of anything more wonderful than putting the key through her door, opening up her fridge or whatever it was, take out some luxury items to eat, put a glass of wine on the table, lay the table, put her knife and her fork on that table, and just sit there and actually savor the meal that is just what she wanted. She didn't have to compromise herself. She didn't have to think about, oh, I've got to make this for that, or this person doesn't like that, or that person's a vegan, or that person doesn't like what I like, and so therefore I have to find a meal that's somewhere in the middle. No, she looks so peaceful and happy. I'm not saying that I'm talking about being happy on your own. I'm talking about find that part of you that you love and that is happy doing the things that they love doing without having those old conditioned messages that tell you you should behave in a totally different way, that tell you that if you don't have friends, you're not normal. If you don't go out, you're not normal. If somebody doesn't fancy you, you're not normal. All of those messages and miseducation that make you feel unworthy, just throw them in the bin and start thinking about what you really like. Sometimes rejection is protection. Sometimes it's redirection, forcing you to take another path. Rejection hurts because we're human, but remember, rejection and worth are not the same thing. And like I said, when rejection is protection, if you'd stayed with that person or that person had stayed, you'd allowed that person to stay with you, you might not have fulfilled your destiny or your purpose. So, rejection and acceptance is what life is all about. And that's all for now. I hope you like that little series, and look out for another one when you need it.